Here's a question to start today. Do you consider yourself good or bad at knowing directions? When you're driving, how many of you have a pretty good sense of direction and you know it? And then would your family agree or disagree? I'm kidding. Or how many of you would admit, yeah, it's definitely not my strong suit? I'd say that there are usually two groups of people out there when it comes to driving. People who are great with directions, and then people who use a navigation app to go to the same place they've been 214 times. So which one are you? I fall somewhere in the middle. I'm not great at navigating, but I think I am, which makes me the worst kind of driver there is. And when I realize that I don't know where I am, I'm too stubborn to admit that I need a navigation app. It's amazing that I ever make it anywhere. However, when I do break down and actually use one, I'm always amazed by it. That no matter where I'm driving, it breaks things down for me turn by turn. I'll turn when it tells me to turn, and then it'll immediately tell me my next step. Turn left in 2.3 miles. And then it'll remind me again 50 more times. It's the most helpful but annoying backseat driver ever. Now, there have been so many times when I really wished I had a navigation app for my life. And maybe you feel the same way. You wish you had an app that said, you need to apply for a new job in 4 weeks. Or financially, you need to go down this road instead of that one. Or in 1 month, your child is going to turn right. It's not going to seem like a big deal, but it is. Pay attention. Or when it comes to your health, you need to turn left instead of right. Or that guy your teenage daughter is dating, she needs to end that relationship in 1.7 seconds. The problem is that our lives don't work like a navigation app. And so instead of us knowing exactly what our next step is, we're often left wondering where to turn next. We're all trying to navigate through life the best that we can, but sometimes we get a little confused and unsure about where the next turn is and what we are supposed to do. And that's difficult for us to accept because you and I really like knowing what's going to happen. We all crave certainty. It's incredibly important to us. We want to know what to expect. We like being in control, but the truth is, we can only know so much, and we can only have so much control. And that's our reality today, and it'll be our reality tomorrow. So what should we do? What should we do when we're unsure of the next step we should take? Well, in this series, we're talking about having the kind of faith that leads to a big, full, abundant life. Faith is all about having trust and hope and confidence in Jesus, and it really shows up when we live differently. When our faith grows, our lives look different. And what we want to do for the next few minutes is talk about what it looks like to apply faith to the places where we're unsure and maybe uncertain. How does faith help us navigate our way through life when we aren't sure what the future holds? Like some of you, I grew up in church hearing the word faith a lot. However, I'm not sure how well I understood it. Here's how the Bible defines faith in the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Here we see the writer use the words confidence and assurance, which basically mean certain. The writer was saying that we can be certain of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. This is interesting, right? Because if we hope for something, it means that it hasn't happened yet. In fact, it also means that we don't know for sure that it's going to happen. Maybe you grow up in a family that didn't have a lot of money. So as a kid, you spent a lot of time leading up to your birthday and Christmases hoping for certain gifts. And most of the time, your hope didn't match your reality when it was time to open gifts. And you were like, oh, well, I knew it was a long shot, but you can't blame a kid for dreaming. But according to the writer in Hebrews, faith means that we're certain of what we hope for and cannot see. This is bigger than me dreaming for a bike that I knew I probably wouldn't get. This is the kind of hope that has confidence attached to it. Why? Because we know that there is someone bigger than all of it who is in control. So when it comes to walking with Jesus, faith is our hope, confidence, and trust in the power of God, the goodness of God, and the promises of God. Faith is what activates the things of God that are fully available to us. So let's go back to our navigation analogy. Let's say that you're ready to drive somewhere. Well, all the power that your car needs to actually move is already within it, specifically in that engine. but you have to turn the vehicle on to activate that engine. Turning on the car is what unlocks the power that's inside of it. And in the same way, for those of us who have put the trust of our hearts and belief of our lives in the person of Jesus Christ, His Spirit lives within us. We have full access to the Holy Spirit and the power of God in our lives. And faith is the thing that activates it and turns it on. Now, the same chapter of Hebrews that defines faith has a section called the Hall of Faith. It mentions people by name, talks about their faith, and it says that they were admired and celebrated for how they believed. In chapter 11, we see this example. By faith, Abraham, when called to go to a place he would later receive as his inheritance, obeyed and went, even though he did not know where he was going. Abraham put his faith in God, even when God didn't lay out the journey for him step by step or turn by turn. It was difficult for Abraham to have zero navigational guidance, just like it would be for us today. But he trusted God, even though he didn't know what was next. So a few verses later, it mentions his wife Sarah. And by faith, even Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful, who had made the promise. Sarah was uncertain about her future, but she held on to the one who is always certain. When her circumstances were unclear, she held on to the promises of a God who is always clear. The chapter goes on to mention people like Abel, Enoch, Noah, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and Rahab, and even some more. These people are still being read about in Bibles all around the world and talked about for thousands of years because of their faith. They had no clue they'd be in the Hall of Faith one day. They simply trusted God, even when the way forward was uncertain. So here's what we learn from their lives. We can face uncertainty with faith. You and I can either seek control, or like Abraham, we can look to the one who's ultimately in control. We can seek certainty, which we'll never get, or like Sarah, we can trust the promises of our Father. The uncertainty is where we apply our faith. So when we're unsure what the future holds, that's actually a gift. It's an opportunity for you and I to build our faith muscle. One more thing about the people in the Hall of Faith. None of the people mentioned in Hebrews 11 were perfect people, not even close. Some of them made terrible mistakes that would cause them to be judged harshly by the people around them. Having faith doesn't mean that we do everything right. In fact, our mistakes are sometimes a reminder to put our confidence in God and not in ourselves. Oftentimes, people shut down the engine of their faith when they mess up. But for the people mentioned in Hebrews 11, they kept going. They got back up and kept their faith alive while God rerouted their journey. Some of these people weren't even able to see their final destination. They held on to hope even when they didn't see the fruit of their labor during their lifetime. Their hope was in something eternal, something they couldn't see but would receive much later. This is how chapter 11 concludes. These were all commended for their faith, yet none of them received what had been promised, since God had planned something better for us, so that only together with us would they be made perfect. Having faith in a loving God is something better to base your life on. It's a bigger foundation for your existence. So as we consider this new way to view uncertainty, here are some questions that you can consider. First, where do you feel uncertain? Name that area where you feel worried about the future. In what parts of your life does the navigation feel unclear? Where you're just not sure, turn by turn, where are you supposed to go? Maybe it's in your work or your finances. Maybe it's in your health, your parenting, or a relationship. It's an area where you really wish you had some control, but you simply don't. Identify that area. Next, what would it look like for you to invite Jesus into that area? As you navigate life, here's a great question to ask that you can build your faith. God, will you please guide me? It's a great question to ask at the beginning of the day. It's a great question to ask before you walk into work, or before you send that job application in, or before you meet with that potential client, or before you talk through that issue with your child. It's like opening a navigation app before you face the next part of your day. Sometimes the way God guides us is through wisdom or discernment and the guidance of other people. So don't expect it to be written in the sky. Just be open to all the different creative ways that God can guide and direct you. And then finally, what are some of his promises that you can remember? While you're waiting, you can build your faith by remembering some of his promises, like this. The Lord is good to all. He has compassion on all he has made. God is good, and he has compassion on everyone he made, and that includes you. Here's another example. So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. God is with you. He'll strengthen you, and he'll help you, and he'll uphold you. It's promises like this that you can hold on to when you feel uncertain. So before we wrap up today, here's one more verse from the book of Hebrews. And without faith, it is impossible to please God, because anyone who comes to him must believe that he exists and that he rewards those who earnestly seek him. As for the people in the Hall of Faith, there's no way that they could have understood the impact of their faith. They just kept their focus on God, even when they didn't know step by step or turn by turn where they were supposed to go. Even when they messed up, even when things were difficult. And now they're in the Hall of Faith. Their names are being talked about thousands of years later, and they're being rewarded in heaven. And their stories tell us that we can face uncertainty with faith.